You have a subjective identity, something that you call yourself. And that seems to be the subject that you call yourself. Seems to be a real subject. And a subject is defined as that which is aware of an object. But if you actually look at yourself, get a good sense of yourself, it's not a subject, it's an object. You're looking at an object. So what you call yourself, the thing that you're aware of, that's not who you really are. And every time you identify with an object, whether it's your body or your thought or desire, anytime you do that, then you're binding yourself to fragmented, partial phenomena. And the result of that is suffering. So any identification with any finite object, bad news. The good news is there's something actually aware of that self of yours. Really look inside, you find, to put it very loosely, you have two selves. You have a self that can be seen, and you have the seer. The reason enlightenment is a little bit tricky is because it's so simple. That fundamentally enlightenment is identifying your true self. The true self is that which is not an object. Am I the damaged child that I find when I look inside? No, that's an object. I mean, it's nice it's there, but that's not what you are. Ignorance is the identification of the seer with the instruments of seeing. Anything you can see as an object, and it's not your real self. So what happens is you go back saying, I have thoughts, I am not my thoughts. I have desires, I'm not my desires. Generally what happens is you start to just get a feeling of freedom, of release from these things that you're identified with and that you thought was your real self. Fundamentally, every major wisdom tradition wants you to move from an identification with finite phenomenal events and identify instead with this transcendental openness. And the transcendental self, incidentally, of course, doesn't have any qualities. It's vast emptiness, vast openness. And you experience this emptiness and openness because it's a space in which everything is arising right now. And that is your awareness. And this sense of freedom and openness that you might have as you're sort of disidentifying with these lesser things that you are not. That sense of vast openness and the sense of its presence. Some people relate to you with a simple phrase I used earlier, which is I am, or I amness. And you have a sense of I amness. The thing to notice about that is it's the only thing in your awareness that's always constant. So if you try to remember what was actually in your awareness 10 hours ago, you can probably recreate and say, okay, I was there, I saw that, sort of that. But one thing is present now that was present 10 hours ago, and that was a feeling of I amness. Whatever you were doing back then, there was still a sense of I amness. You could still have recognized that. 5 years ago, no matter what was happening, there is still the sense of I amness. It's the same I amness you had 10 years ago. It's the same I amness you had 100 years ago. Show me the face you had before your parents were born. There's something in you right now that existed prior to your parents' birth.